Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. Today we will see something very important in this new parasha, new Torah portion. This portion has a lot to do with us, of course. It has a lot to do with our fathers, our past, and also it has a lot to do with the future. Remember that we are about to end the year cycle, and we are about to start a new cycle, which is Abib 1. The new Torah cycle as well. In this Torah portion, Ki Tavo, which means when you enter, it tells the story of many things. First one is the curses and the blessings. The curses that our forefathers obtained by not keeping the Torah of Yahweh, and the blessings if they did. This one makes a reflecting towards each one of us how we convey ourselves with the Almighty. Before we start this, I'm going to ask you, if you have not subscribed, please do so you can get the latest production that we are always working on. So let's just jump into it. Ki Tavo is the blessings that Yahweh has given us to our forefathers when they enter into the land. Look what it says here. Chapter 26, verse 1 to 29, verse 9, that's the Torah portion, Ki Tavo. When you enter into the land that Yahweh, your Ayil Almighty, is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess it and settle in it. This is one of the most important things that Yahweh is giving here. When you possess this land, this is going to be yours as an inheritance. Remember that this land was given to our father Abraham when he was promised this land that was going to give milk and honey. In other words, it was going to be a very prosperous land, but it had to be up to a certain time. Abraham cannot just obtain it right away. It had to be a certain wait, and that wait was about to be fulfilled. That's when our forefathers inherited, when Yahushua or Joshua entered our forefathers into the land. Now, Yahweh says very clear, this is for you to have because it's an inheritance. But I want you to see something very important that is a parallel to this verse. Look at what chapter 17, verse 14 says, which is very similar. And it says, Ki Tavo, when you enter into the land that Yahweh your Ayil Almighty is giving you, you have taken possession of it and are living in there. You can say, I want to have a king over me like the other nations around me. Now, do you see the parallel to one another from the Torah portion 26, but chapter 27? The only difference is that Yahweh originally gave this inheritance to our forefathers, but they weren't satisfied. They were not satisfied with what Yahweh has given them, and that was the land, everything that was around it, very prosperous land, something that they could work on it, something that they could settle in there, and yet they weren't satisfied. They wanted a king just like the rest of the nations. My question to you, brothers and sisters, didn't they have a king? That was Yahweh Sebaot, the Melech HaMelachim, the King of Kings. And also indirectly, at that time, before Yahushua, they have Moses. Something very important that we have to understand, that human beings are always want to copycat other nations. In this case, they wanted to do the same thing as the other nations. And what more do they have if they have the Torah with them and they have Yahweh with them? They didn't need anything else. And yet they still want a king, a physical king over them. If you guys remember the book of Judges, Yahweh gave them judges. They didn't want judges, they want a king. Then Yahweh gave him Shaul or Saul. Saul came, ruled for certain years, and yet he went straight away. from the Torah of Yahweh. He started doing his own thing, and he failed, and that's what David came on the scene. Once again, that was the reason for it, and Yahweh says, you did not follow my Torah. Now, let's continue, because I want you to see something very important. The word Ki Tavo is a singular word, which means when you come in. Ki Tavo means when you come, but as a plural, as a many. Yahweh speaks to each one of us as an individual, not as a group, not as a twofer, not as a combination or combo. He always is speaking to us individually speaking. Every time you study the Torah, every time you read the Torah, is because Yahweh himself is speaking to each one of us as individual. Problem, brothers and sisters, that we always want to include the whole nation, but that's not how it works. Yahweh wants each one of us to be accountable for your own self, not as a group, but as an individual. That's why when you read like this as a singular, he's speaking to you. When you study the Torah, it's like Yahweh speaking to you, not to me, to you. When I study the Torah, he's speaking to me, not to you. You see what I'm saying? So, in other words, it's always referring to the individual that the person is reading to. Let's continue. Chapter 26, verse 5, then in the presence of Yahweh, you are ye Almighty, you will say, my father was a nomad from Aram, where Laban, the Aramee, tried to destroy my father. He descended to Mizraim or Egypt, few in numbers and stayed. There he became large, strong, and populous nation. And this is exactly what happened to Yaakov when he went into Laban, his uncle. If you guys remember, and we will talk about in a bit about Laban and Yaakov, but here it says very clear that in the presence of Yahweh, you will say, you will recite this. And let me ask you a question to each one of you. Don't we recite this? Don't we pronounce this and recite this actual verse? And we do. We actually recite it in Pesach, in the Seder of Pesach, in that night. And by the way, it is coming very soon. So, nevertheless, we have to think that this is just a verse. No, Yahweh says very clear that we have to recite it. Look at what it says at Targum Jonathan about this verse. You shall answer and say before Yahweh, you are ye Almighty, our father Yaakov went down to Aram of Nahariah first, and Laban tried to destroy him, but the word of Yahweh saved him from his hands. And then he went down to Mizraim or Egypt and stayed there. Some people, but he became a great people and powerful and many. And exactly what happened to our forefathers went down to Egypt and became a numerous great people and powerful as well. Chapter 10, verse 22. His fathers descended to Mizraim with only 75 people, but now Yahweh our ye Almighty made them numbers as many as the stars of the firmament. And exactly what happened when they went out of Egypt in that night of Pesach or Passover. It is very crucial that is one of the reasons why Yahweh wants us to do the Seder, that Pesach, that Passover, that night. And we recite this because it's very crucial for us to understand where are we coming from? Where is our origin of all this as a nation? So it's very, very crucial. Chapter 26, verse 16. Today, Yahweh, your ye Almighty, commands you to obey these laws and statutes. Therefore, you will observe them, obey them with all your heart and all your being. This is very something, and we're switching gear, by the way. In this very verse, Yahweh is stating something that you and I and those people goes through it. Verse 17, you are declaring today to agree that Yahweh, your Almighty, that you will follow his ways, shall observe his laws, or Torah, mitzvot, and statutes, and you will do that what he says. This is something that is declaring, Yahweh is declaring for us to declare these as vows. This is something that a marriage couple goes through it when they are about to declare a marriage, a vow of marriage, and exactly what earthly marriage does. I'm going to bring this next. The marriage commitment, what is called the erusin, is what is being done here with our forefathers when one is declaring the vows and the other party as well. 26 verse 18, look at what Yahweh is saying. In return, Yahweh is agreeing today that you are his own special treasure, as he promised you that you observe his mitzvot. You see what I'm saying? There are vows exchanging here. Yahweh will do this, and as well, Israel, our forefathers, even ourselves will do this too. So in other words, this is a marriage contract. This marriage contract has a lot to do with the Torah. 26:19, and that you will lift up your height, he lift you up high above all nations that he has made in exaltation, reputation, and kabod, or magnitude. And that is, he, as he said, you will be a kadosh people, a set apart people to Yahweh, you are Yil Almighty. You see what I'm saying? If you guys remember, when somebody gets married in the Hebrew culture, they usually lift up the bride, and also lift up, in a chair, they lift up the groom as well. And this is the same as Yahweh is stating here. They will lift you up. You see that? It's something that was not made up. It's something that is actually in the Torah of Yahweh. Look at what it says here, 81:4 of Psalms. For this is the mizbat, or the command for Israel, an ordinance of Ayil Almighty of Yaakov. This is something that Yahweh is giving to you and to I every time we want to do something for the Creator, and that is to observe his commandments, not because you have to, is because you love the Creator as well. This word in Hebrew, mikra kodesh, which means the dress rehearsal, is something that the bride has to do while she is getting prep for the wedding. Do you know that you and I are in the same situation as well? This situation has a lot to do with rehearsing before the groom comes or returns, and that is Mashiach. Mashiach is coming very soon, and thus we have to get ready. We have to do the Mikra Kodesh, which is the dress rehearsal. We need to rehearse. Why do you think it says Mikra Kodesh? Mikra means the convocation. Okay? Look it up. When Yahweh says, these are my festivals, that you need to do them as a convocation, or a convention, in other words, which means a Mikra. Mikra, that's the word for convention, which means a rehearsal. Every time we do festivals, every time we do Shabbat, every time we do everything that surrounds the Torah, you are rehearsing as a bride. That's what I mean. Right now, we are rehearsing before the groom comes and returns. This marriage contract or commitment is the erusin that we are getting ready for this marriage. No wonder why you go into the book of Revelation and you see that this is the Lamb wedding, right? The marriage of the Lamb. This word mochar, which is the pay for the bride to the father. This is the price that is being paid to the father to obtain the bride. The mochar, that's what it's called. Yahushua did not come to redeem himself, but to redeem his people from their sins. Israel is his bride, us, in other words. Therefore, he has sold for the price of his bride, and that is his blood. Do you see that? He has to pay this to the Father, to Yahweh, for us. That's what is called the mochar. Let me give you 2 examples on the Torah and also in the scriptures. Exodus or Shemot 22 verse 16. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to marry and he sleeps with her, he has to pay the price of the mochar. You see that? Dowry. For her to be his wife. This is an example that I can give you in the Torah, but I will give you another one. 2 Samuel 3:14. David sent messengers to Ish-Bosheth, the son of Shaul. Give me back my wife Michal. You look at what it says here. The mochar, the dowry for her was 100 foreskins of Philistines. You see what I'm saying? This is the price that he had to pay for Michal when he wanted to marry her. But what did Shaul ask for in return as the mochar, as a dowry? It was 100 foreskins of the Philistines. Now, let me tell you how this happened in few words. David was raised in the house of Shaul. Remember that he killed the giant, the Nephilim. And when he killed that Nephilim, he became part of the army of Shaul. He was raised under the care of Shaul afterwards. So he became almost like his father. But he fell in love with Michal. But he wanted to be part of the royalty. He wasn't part of it. He wanted to be part of the royalty. And he was very, very smart. So he asked for the hand of Michal, and the mochar or dowry, in other words, he needed to pay for that price, which is, remember, is under Shaul's care, which is part of his, what should I say, the part of his house, in other words, his property, in other words. And I'll give an example. Exodus or Shemot chapter 20, about the Shabbat, Yahweh says, you should keep the Shabbat, not just you. It will be your son, your daughter, your slave girl, your donkey, and so forth. See, do you see he's mentioning every single one of them? And that is part of he's the father's property. That includes the wife. That includes the daughter, the son. All of them are part of his property. In the case of Shaul, Michal was his property. So in order for David to obtain that property, he needed to pay some money. And that was called the mochar. Shaul didn't want him to be part of it, to be part of the circle, in other words, of the royalty. So what did he ask for? 100 foreskins of Philistines. And do you think he thought that he was going to survive? He didn't thought he was going to survive, and yet he did. He not only brought 100 foreskins, he brought 200 foreskins of the Philistines. And he didn't have anything else but to give his daughter Michal, in which will be another story of another video about that. Going back to this, he had to pay for that mochar, for that dowry. Now, let's go back to the book of Yasher, and let's go back to Yaakov and Laban. Yaakov in Yasher 29 verse 24, and Yitzhak called Yaakov and said to him, do not take the wife of the daughters of Canaan, for this is what our father Abraham commanded us, according to the word of Yahweh that he had commanded him, saying, to your seed I will give this land, if your children keep my covenant that I have made with you, then I will also fulfill to your children what I have spoken to you, and your forsake them, and I will not forsake them. This is what Yahweh said to our forefathers, and they needed to follow the same command, same instruction. Verse 30, and Yitzhak finished sending Yaakov and blessed him and gave him many gifts, together with silver and gold, and sent him away. And Yaakov listened to his father and mother. He kissed them and got up and went to Param Adam. And Yaakov was 77 years old when he left the land of Canaan from Beersheba. Now, let me pause here for a moment. If you guys remember that Yitzhak, when he got married, did the same thing. His father, Abraham needed to go back to the same land where Yaakov is going to, which is the land where Laban lived. Laban's sister, which is Rivka, the mother of Yaakov, at that time she was living, of course, in the land where Laban is living. But what the Eliezer, the servant of Abraham did, he gave him jewelry, he gave him gold, he gave him everything to come and purchase that woman, that future bride for Yitzhak. And that went well. In the case of Jacob, something happened. I want you to see this. Verse 38, Yahweh caused Yaakov to find chesed or favor in the sight of Eliphaz, son of Esau, and his men, and they heard the voice of Yaakov and did not kill him. And Eliphaz and his men took all that belonged to Yaakov together with the silver and gold that he had brought with him from Beersheba, and they left them with nothing. This is something that you and I have to accord, in other words. This is what here is something that we need to take in consideration, because Eliphaz was the son of Esau. Esau wanted to kill Yaakov, what he has done to him. Remember what all the things that he have done? What in quote unquote, he have stole his birthright, and it wasn't true. He sold it, in other words. He sold it, and he said that he stole it. He did not. So, which we will talk about the next cycle of the year Torah portions. Now, going back here, Eliphaz stole everything that he had, all the jewelry, all the gold, all the stuff that he was bringing to his wife to purchase his future bride, got stolen by his nephew. So when he got to the other side with Laban, he had nothing. No wonder why he had to work 14 years, 7 years for his oldest sister, and then the Rachel, which is the wife that he loved, he had to work another 7 years, total 14. Do you see that he was broke completely, and so that is the reason why he needed to. Now we know why he had to work double for initially what he could pay for. So going back here, let's come to an end. Look at what Yahushua said about us, about this mochar, about this wedding that is going to take place. Chapter 22, verse 1 of Matthew, Yahushua answered and spoke to them in parables. The kingdom of Yashmai in our heavens is like a king who performed a wedding. He sent out his servants to those who have been invited to the wedding, but the guests wouldn't not go. Why? Because they didn't want nothing to do with the king. And he sent out other servants again, saying, say to the guests, behold, I have prepared the banquet, and have sacrificed oxen and fowls, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding. But they despised him, went away, some of the city and some of the business. The rest took the servants, mistreated them, and murdered them. Something that was not right. But the king heard this. His anger was kindled. He drove out the murderers, set fire to the houses with fire. And he said to the servants, the wedding is ready, only that the guests were not worth it. And exactly what happened to the first century. The first century was the same thing. Even before that, Yahweh has sent many prophets to bring teshuvah, to come back to Yahweh, to bring repentance. And yet, they did not listen. They wanted to do their own will. When Mashiach came, we see that it was the same situation at hand. And Mashiach needed to, no wonder why he said, I did not come but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the northern kingdom. Only the worthy will be invited to this wedding. But the previous guests are not worth it because they did not listen. They're supposed to have this wedding, but they didn't want it to. So what happens next? Verse 9, at time, go out on the road and invite everyone to the wedding. His servants went out in the highways and gathered together everyone they met, good and bad. And the wedding was filled with people eating. And the king came to them that they were eating. And there was a man who was not clothed with garments. So that he said to him, friend, how did you come to here without a wedding garment? But he was silent. Guess what the wedding garment is, brothers and sisters? This wedding garment is the Torah. If you do not keep the Torah, you don't have that wedding garment. And let me prove it to you so you don't say that I'm making stuff up. In the book of Revelation chapter 2, Revelation 18, 19, 20, and 21, it speaks about the linens of the set apart ones, what they call it, the holy ones, are the justifications of the Torah, are the righteous of the Torah, is the Torah itself. Mashiach himself, with his own words to the Kehillah or the community of Laodicea, he said to that last community, he said, you are nothing but blind, naked, and you aren't worth it. But I say to you that to buy ointment from me, which is the anointing of Yahweh's Spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, and also to cloth from my garments. What do you think it is? It's the Torah. If you don't have Torah, you don't have the wedding garments. That is what the king is stating here. Verse 13, the king said to his ministers, bind them, his hand and his feet, and send them down to the Sheol. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The guests are many, but the elect are few. And it's so true nowadays. We think that we already made it just because we are doing a little bit of a Torah, or we just have tzitzis, or we have the peyots, or we have the talit. That's part of it. That's what is part of the combo, in other words. But it's not everything. Yahweh wants all of us to continue this Torah, but to have all this and to continue, but it's not enough. We need to do more. This rehearsal that we are doing is unto the very end, until Mashiach returns. It is not enough what we're doing right now. We need to continue doing righteousness unto the Mashiach, until the groom returns. We are doing, that's what is called the rehearsal. We cannot stop this rehearsal. It is very important. And that's one of the reasons I will close with this. Book of Acts 3:21, and he, Mashiach, has to abide him in the Shamayim or heavens until the time comes to restore all things as Yahweh said long ago. It is time for us to the northern kingdom to restore all things. And that is one of the calls that we are stating right now in this very moment, to restore all things, to restore the name of Yahweh, to restore the Yeshua's name, to restore the time, the Torah calendar that is being for a long time. We need to all come to an agreement that this is the Torah calendar Yahweh has spoken since the very beginning of creation, that our forefathers follow. That when it stray away, that's a different, and you can actually see it here, one of the links. I will leave it there about the Torah calendar. Please watch the Torah calendar so you can say, you understand what I'm saying about the restoring of all things. That's part of it, but there's a lot of things that we need to restore before the Mashiach return. He's in Shemayim, in the right hand of the Father. But us, we need to finish the restoration of all things. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. We'll see you next time, and may Yahweh give us the shalom that we need, especially in these dark times. We'll see you soon. Shabbat shalom.
Give us a like. Thank you. We'll begin.
Toda Rabba. If you like this video, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. There's more content in production. Thank you.